Are you making the same mistake like me? Now, I thought this was a harmless habit, but it was actually ruining my brush strokes. It was making my colors really muddy and it was destroying my expensive brushes. Hi, I'm Dr. Shazia, your paint buddy. And if you love secret art tips, fun painting demos, and brutally honest art supply reviews, then stop scrolling and keep watching Conversations with Canvas. Today, I'm sharing something simple but super important, and that is how I actually load my paintbrushes and how the tiny shifts that I made completely changed my brushwork. I used to previously buy expensive brushes thinking, okay, this brush is going to make me paint like a genius, but all I got was the same flat, boring paint brush marks. And honestly, I used to blame everything under the sun except my silly painting habits because I didn't know that they were wrong. Now, the first mistake that I used to actually make was using my brush to mix colors, and I'll tell you now why this is a bad idea. Now, you can see that I'm mixing a green with the yellow and blue, and you will see that once I've laid down the color, also, there is so much more color in the bristles of the brush, and this paint is all going to go waste. So I'm actually wasting a lot of paint first of all when I mix it with a brush, and even if I wash the brush, there is still some color remaining in the bristles, which is giving this light yellowish green color on my paper. Now, when I pick up this magenta with that same supposedly washed brush, the color loses its vibrancy because of the complementary green which is hiding in the bristles. And this was one of the reasons why my colors looked dull. Now, the shift that I made was I started using a palette knife to mix the colors. And guess what? There were no more muddy colors. And I also realized how much paint I used to previously waste because half of the color was actually hiding inside the bristles. I won't lie, sometimes I still mix with a brush because why not? It's convenient, it's so handy when I'm in the flow. But when I do use a brush, I try really hard to not let the paint travel all the way up into the ferrule area because that's where the paint loves to hide. And I also use separate brushes for warm and cool colors. That keeps the muddy colors completely out of your paintings. And now the three ways that I load my paintbrush. The first one is called just enough. Now this is usually for the initial blocking stage where the paint is kind of diluted, and I dilute it either with water or any medium. Now here I'll be loading the brush, then offloading, that is removing some of the paint, but sometimes I do not do that, especially if I want drips. But this is loading and offloading, and this works great when you want to paint in dark colors, shadows, and just loosely blocking in the shapes without overthinking about every brushstroke. Mostly, also, the brushstrokes won't be visible in this phase, in this stage, sorry. That is the just enough brushstroke stage. Okay, the second one is called scoop it up. Now, here we're getting really dramatic. This is my thick, juicy paint loading style. This is where I want texture, gooey paint, chunky highlights, visible brushstrokes. Now here also I take care that not to extend it beyond the tip of the paintbrush. And you want to have, you build up the layers. The paint is pretty thick. You could add in a gel medium if you're not using the heavy body kind of paints. This is great for highlights, layers, building up the paint with lot of texture. Now, finally, we come to the last loading style, which is called the barely there. Now, this is basically dry brush technique where you use a completely dry brush. You don't use a damp brush, you use a new brush. You load the brush and you completely offload it. Now, there is suspiciously very little paint. This is great for wood textures, waves, shimmer, broken color effects, and all those scratchy painting effects which actually make the painting look alive. And that, my paint buddy, is how I like to load my paint brushes and how I use a palette knife or maybe separate brushes to avoid muddy colors in my paintings. Do try making these shifts in your color mixing and loading styles and share your experience over here in the comment section. Give your feedback if you want any other things that you want me to cover up. And until next time, take care, keep creating, and I'll see you soon for more art magic on Conversations with Canvas. Bye.